Okay, welcome back to our series of interviews. Today's guest is Aishwarya. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Hello. I feel the need to say my age first because that helps. It helps figure out exactly where I am in life. So I'm 22-year-old. I am in a fourth. In my fourth year of a 5-year BS/MS program, doing a master's in biology, which means I'm almost done. And though I'm doing a master's in biology, I did have to take mathematics throughout school, throughout high school, and in my first 2 years of college as well. So I've had, and since I'm doing a master's in biology, I definitely hated mathematics at some point in my life, which is what makes this a whole lot more interesting. Apart from my studies, I do spoken word poetry. I write my own poetry, and I teach English. So that's a lot of fun. So I think, yeah, that summarizes everything.
Thank you so much. So, my first question is, how did you hear of Vesaku and why did you join?
So there are so many layers to this. The best way to explain this is that I actually already know two people on the team. So Professor Neeraja was my math professor in my second year of college, and she taught me a course on probability. And another person on the team who makes memes, his name is Nandan, and he's actually my senior in college, and he's doing a mathematics master's. He's just finishing up his thesis. So it's through the two of them that I was introduced to Sophie. And Sophie saw one of my spoken word poems um, about the concept of infinity, about Gödel's incompleteness theorems. And I had sent that across to Professor Neeraja, who sent it off to Sophie. And then that whole grapevine happened, and then they asked me to join the team. And that's how I'm here with Vesaku today.
Okay, and so you kind of explained a bit about your experience with maths and hating it at some point, which I feel like is only healthy. Like if you've never hated maths in your life, like I question some of your sanity. But just, I guess, how have you experienced mathematics in your life? Like your experience of it and learning it
so
particularly.
I think my experience with mathematics is definitely a sine curve where I have loving it on one side and me on the other side. So I love it and I hate it at some points of time in my life. See, mathematics can be poetry. When I started learning mathematics in middle school, I hated it throughout middle school because the way that I was taught mathematics was so marks oriented, which that you need to be able to finish it in this amount of time. You need to be able to understand it with the rest of the class. And it was just very difficult for me to grasp those concepts with that time limit and with the speed of classes. And I did badly 1 year of math in my third standard, and it became a mental block for me, just like math is not my thing, which I think happens to a lot of students, where even if they do start liking it or understanding it, they just feel like they hate it because they need to hate it because they did badly at some point. So I had a block against mathematics for 7 years until I reached my 10th standard. And I had the most incredible mathematics teacher, both inside and outside school, because I started going for extra help as well. And this math teacher, for example, the one in school, I was at the very back of the class, and she would let me go. Her name is Mrs. Radhika, and she would let me go at whatever pace I wanted. I would be 3 chapters behind, but she would still teach the class and then come to the back of the class and then teach me whatever I was learning. And I think that really helped me understand that math can be for everyone and that it's really not about speed. And at that point of time, whenever you get good at something, you automatically start liking it more. So that's how I started liking math a bit more. And math was a breeze through the rest of high school for me. And from ninth grade to 12th grade, it was the subject that I did best in out of all the subjects that I took, including biology. And then when I went to college is when it went from just doing best and getting marks to actually being interested in it. And I think because my first semester of college was on group theory, which is just beautiful, it is so lovely, and I am a complete abstract algebra lover right now. And the professor was so amazing, and it was just something that I started loving and I started wanting to learn more about. And through the first 2 years of college, I enjoyed those mathematics courses. And that's my love-hate relationship with math.
It's incredible how a teacher can make or break your entire experience with something. And like I just yeah, it's insane. And I think from the perspective of a student, I think it's definitely necessary that teachers not just care about the students, but about the subject itself. Because it's so obvious when they care about neither of the two, and you can tell, and you're just like, look, neither of us want to be here. And so, in your
Very
experience, you
true.
said you did biology, no, you said you did maths in your first 2 years. And are you doing maths now, or is it just more of a personal joy, or are you learning it for academic purposes still?
So actually, I that comes to where my poetry comes in. It's perfect segue there because I started writing poetry very recently. I started writing spoken word poetry very recently. And the first spoken word poem that remains to be the proudest one that I am of is about a mathematics concept, which is about the incompleteness theorem, which I literally found just by going down the Wikipedia wormhole, which only academics will understand, where you just keep clicking on those hyperlinks and you end up somewhere, right? So I was in one of those Wikipedia wormholes, and I found this concept, and I was like, that is so pretty. That is so pretty. Infinity is so beautiful. And this was during the time that I was done with mathematics. I didn't have to do it anymore. It wasn't mandatory. So I still find myself learning random little concepts from everywhere, watching those YouTube videos about something that's interesting. And honestly, at this point in time, it's just really good material for poems because adding that extra level of something scientific not only makes you sound smart, it also makes your poems much cooler. So that's what math has become for me now. It's become a tool that I actually use, but not in a sense that most people would, right, in their daily lives. So you think that you'd learn math for, I don't know, accounts or whatever normal people do, or mathematical researchers, I guess, would use it for their everyday life. But I end up using it as a tool for poetry, which I think on its own gave it a special place in my life that I can say is completely my own, which I really like.
That's amazing. I also dabbled in poetry a bit, and I think inspiration is the hardest thing to come across. And when it hits, it's perfect and it's beautiful. And my question is sort of, now that you're not studying it within a school environment, how, and so like there's no syllabus, how do you come across topics, or how do you find things and you're like, oh, I'm going to research this topic and I'm going to go deeper into that? How do you come across that?
So there are two ways that works. The first is because since I'm still in an institute, so I'm still surrounded by academics. My friend group itself has two mathematicians, so they're constantly talking about probability and statistics, and I even know words, like weird words. Hold on, they were talking about something recently, which will come to me. I really wanted to use it so I could flex, but I'll come back to that. But like I'm serious. Like it's like black shoals. Yes, I even know there's something called black shoals. I have no idea what it is, but I can use it in a conversation.
That's
So
all that
I
matters.
hear that's all that matters. It's just for the pop culture. But yeah, so I hear a lot of these things around me, which I think is like that in itself makes me curious and makes me want to learn more. But the other way around that it also works is going backwards, where my memory is notoriously bad. I remember absolutely nothing from my schooling years in any subject, let alone mathematics. So when I used to need to help my younger brother study mathematics, I would just be like, how have I forgotten all of this? But I'd find myself interested in it again. So it's happened through both learning new things and through relearning old things, which I think, like, especially when you pick up a concept when you were in like fifth standard and hated your guts with, and then you figure it out
Long
again, you're just like, hey,
division.
that's easy. I long division, right? Am I right? Fractions, I for the life of me I cannot divide a fraction by a fraction. Like I still don't know how to, like it just doesn't work in my mind.
That just unlocked a new level of trauma in my brain.
The fractions by fractions, right? Because you're just like, okay, this one, which one flips over again? And when it flips over, does it flip over again because it's come back on this? Like, you know what I'm talking about? But yeah, so relearning all things is also really fun. But as I said, even when I'm writing poems and I'm just like, okay, I need something to make this sound smarter, and I will find myself doing that. searching for things. I'm serious, literally how it happens.
But I think there's something poetic about coming back full circle, like things you've learned and then revisiting them and actually seeing the beauty and just how amazing it is. And when you were a child, you were just like, why do I have to do this?
I think, yeah, I think you pretty much, like put the hammer on the nail, which is that you're figuring out, why do I need to do this? And now I'm just like, I want to relearn it. And that in itself is a complete shift, which is why mathematics itself looks different to me now than it did before. Because the stigma around mathematics is real. So, now that I'm looking at things because I choose to, in itself gives me a certain empowerment over mathematics.
I think that's the most important part. Like you said, it's the choice, is you have actively made the choice in your own heart and mind that you are interested in it and you want to know more about it. And I think that is a bigger motivator, in my opinion, than absolutely anything else in this world. If you want to do something simply because it's what your heart desires, then, I think there's nothing and no one that can stop you from doing that.
I completely agree. Because, I mean, like, let's take the concept of integrals, right? Like, I still don't understand where the heck they come from. Because, like, I just learned it purely by formulas in school, right? Like, you just learn that this is this. And a week ago, one of my friends, Nandan, who I was telling you is on the team, started shooting fire, like rapid fire questions at me. Like, what's the integral of this? What's the differential of this? I got everything wrong. Of course I did. So, like, but that made me want to go back and figure out, okay, how did this even come about? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, so you're like, then there's that weird bar graphs and triangles and area under the curve and stuff. You relearn stuff like that, which I still don't understand, but at least I'm trying.
I learned
And as you said, I'm
integrals.
trying because I want to.
Exactly. I like integrals. I learned them as the reverse of derivatives, but then
Mhm.
integrals actually make more sense to me than derivatives because, like with the graphs and the area and the volume. So now I have derivatives as the reverse of integrals.
I mean, but like, but that's completely your own process now, so it feels so much cooler to you.
Yeah. So I think now moving on to the topic that you've touched on a lot is your poetry. And you brought
Mhm.
something to share with us today.
I did bring a poem for you.
Take it
And just give
away.
me a second. It's right over there. Hold on. All right. So the poem that I'm about to explain to you is about one of Gödel's incompleteness theorems. I'm assuming Gödel is a mathematician, because this theorem is essentially called the theorem of infinity. Now, I don't know if the mathematical concept is right. I will never know, because I used it purely as because I thought it was beautiful and I wrote something about it. But the whole point of this was so that I can understand this concept in a way that makes sense to me. Because if someone says something is infinite, I don't get that, because that's not something that you see, that you can tell. So this is basically something that helped me understand, or as you get to the end of it, not understand, because this poem is essentially an existential crisis. The poem of infinity. Have you heard of Gödel's incompleteness theorems, where the concept of infinity is questioned? That though numbers go on and on and on and on and on, the number of even numbers should be the same as the number of prime. Now, that sounds weird to me. That something can go on forever, no matter if it's even or if it's odd. So, how about love? Shouldn't it be the same for the even and for the odd? So what if someone's gay? So what if someone's straight? Or anything on the spectrum between or after? Shouldn't it be the same? The number of even is the same as the number of odd. Their infinities are the same. Infinity doesn't change. There isn't an infinity which is smaller than another. And in love, does it matter how much I love my parents, my friends, my beliefs, my cats, my country, my passions, myself? Why does it have to be quantified? Why is it that I'm afraid to love someone too much or that I love someone too less? But then, what about hate. Would it be right to hate everything with the same degree? Because I know that I hate cucumbers in my cheese sandwiches, but I don't hate it as much as I hate the idea that all kids aren't fed at night. I mean, I hate a lot of things, but I'm sure I love a lot more things. Or are both those infinities the same again? Are these really equal halves or one thirds? Because there is definitely a third for stuff I have no opinion about, or one fourths because of the things I don't even know existed, or one fifths because of things I just don't understand yet, so much so that it becomes infinitely so small that it doesn't matter anymore. Did you ever imagine that an infinity could be insignificant? So, what about me? I am a part of some infinity. Which infinity makes me insignificant? In which world do I no longer matter? Do I not matter in any world? In an infinite number of worlds? I don't matter anywhere, do I? Thank you.
Oh my goodness. I love that.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. That
Thank
is,
you.
thank you so much for sharing that. Wow. And I love that part where you keep breaking the fractions from a half to a third. So cool. I just, wow, that was so moving. Thank you.
Fighting my hatred with fraction. Yeah.
Thank you just so much for that incredible poem, for this interview, and just thank you for being part of the team.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
And thank you to everyone watching this. Bye.
Bye.